We were talking about this book. Of course, I'm going to introduce Mother Rytasha again. Some people maybe just tuned in and they didn't hear you. Mother Rytasha is a religion of love, the teachings of Mother Rytasha, who has been doing this wonderful work for over 25 years, I believe, and she's been all over the world, and she has these amazing little books. I mean, they probably weigh, I think, maybe 3 ounces, 2 ounces, not very much. And they say so much. You could have volumes that wouldn't even say all that these books do. But we started to talk about this one called Rebel. Oh, it could be a rebel, it could be anything. Why don't you tell us about how that book makes everyone feel?
Well, this is the thing that we're told here to rebel. And what are we rebelling against? Everything that is corrupt and false. And I think if we look at the world today, I think we can see that with the different revolutions like the Arab Spring, the Occupy Wall Street. The people really are rebelling against corruption. They want something finer, truer, higher. They want the spiritual. In truth, there is a spiritual revolution that is prophesied that will come in our time. And these are symptoms of it. These are not political revolutions. People want something better than that.
Yes, and often they can't find it. They don't know where to look for it. They're doing it in every way they can. So your spiritual teachings are of great value today to make people know that they can be better, and it's very simple.
It is. Spiritual life is very simple. We make it complicated. It's very simple. And in Rebel, there's a wonderful story about the word love. And I love this because it's one of the most misused. A friend of mine calls it a 4-letter word. It's very misused. And the story is about a hilsa fish. It starts by saying, know the importance of saying what you mean and meaning what you say, and that what you hear is clear. So it's very important. Words and how we use language, how we communicate to each other is very important, especially in spiritual teaching. And she says, or else, she said, you could end up like the hilsa fish. Hilsa fish is a little fish that lives in the Bay of Bengal. The hilsa fish, yes, she said, the hilsa fish who lived happily in the Bay of Bengal till one day a fisherman cast his nets upon the water and he was caught. The hilsa fish struggled in the net trying to get free. All he could think of was how he might escape, till hearing the fisherman say on seeing him, this is indeed my lucky day, for it is well known the king loves the hilsa fish. Now when the hilsa fish heard the word love, and that it was the king himself who loved him, he stopped struggling and no longer wished to escape. The fisherman took a large clay pot and filling it with water, carefully placed the hilsa fish inside. Then taking up the pot, he set off for the palace. At the palace, the fisherman was stopped by the sentries. But when the fisherman explained that he came to give a gift of the hilsa fish to the king, the sentries saluted smartly, saying that the king loved the hilsa fish, and opened the heavy gates that the fisherman might enter. Hearing what the sentries said, the hilsa fish thought to himself, so it really is true, the king does love me. And he swam happily inside the clay pot. The fisherman was led into a magnificent hall, whose floors and walls were made of marble inlaid with precious stones. Here the king sat in splendor high upon his throne. His robes were cloth of gold, and on his head a crown set with many-colored jewels. The fisherman bowed low before the king. Majesty, said the fisherman, I bring you a gift of the hilsa fish, for it is well known that you love the little hilsa fish. Thank you, said the king, graciously accepting the fisherman's gift. Indeed, I do love the hilsa fish, said the king. Fried.
Oh, my. Oh. I thought something very good was going to happen.
So did the hilsa fish. So we're very careful how we use that word love.
Oh, I feel sad.
Oh.
No, but interesting. Is there really a hilsa fish?
Hilsa fish, yes, in
Is
Bengal.
it special?
It's supposed to be a wonderful fish.
And so Yes, and you know, I thinking about that. So many divorces and so many unhappy relationships. Maybe the words are used too casually without really deep.
Well, that's why it
feeling.
starts by saying, say what you mean and make sure your meaning is clear and that what you've heard is correct.
That was excellent. Now, see, what you just heard Mother Rytasha say is why you want these books, because that's just one thing in the book, one little piece in the book. Every book is filled with these very empowering stories.
I love teaching stories. I think we remember stories and they make an impression, and we love stories.
Teaching through stories. You'll notice that the politicians now more talk about when they're trying to make a point. They use someone in the audience or someone in some city and how they suffered and struggled. They bring in stories because it makes the point.
It's a very old, tried and true method of teaching and making people understand something. And people will remember the story. Dry philosophy is boring.
I'll never forget the Hilsa Fish story.
Oh,
I never even heard of a Hilsa Fish, right? But now I know about that, and it'll make me think a little bit more. So when you say something to someone, it's good that you use the right words so there's no misunderstanding. We were just talking about that the other day with something else. This is very lovely that you are able to do this. You are unique, you know. I mean, how do you feel being unique?
Well, I think everybody is absolutely unique. The soul is individual.
Well, it is, but not everybody uses the gifts that they've been given, do they?
No, and that is a tragedy. But I think everybody has something to contribute. I always feel like what we're doing, I always compare it to a mosaic. I can do certain thing, Raja Khan can do certain thing, you are doing a certain thing, somebody else will. We all make a little contribution, and all together we can make something wonderful. And God is in the center.
I've always talked about that. Just one little candle, the light from one little candle can't brighten the whole world, but if everybody had a candle, it would be a pretty
you can
bright
light
world.
Many candles from one little candle and not diminish the original candle.
True. That's really true. You're a whole organization, and I call it an organization. It started with really just you and Razak and a few people, and now you're very large.
It's actually somebody once came up to me and said, "I hope you're not one of those organized religions." And I said, "Not to worry, we're not very organized." But it is growing very quickly because people have a hunger for the truth and the beauty, and they sense it because we know. I always begin any talk I give by saying, no one can teach you to be spiritual. Spiritual is what you are. We can only remind each other by love of what we may have forgotten. So this is just a reminder. Everybody knows. It's what we all are, and it reminds people.
I don't know if I ever shared the story. Maybe I did, because I always wondered about this. But I was a volunteer. I told you about the woman who had polio, and
No.
I never told you that story. And that really was, for me, one of your little books in a sense. But it taught me so much. I was a volunteer when I lived in Minneapolis, and there was a woman who had polio when she was 9, and she's now 30, and she's been living in an iron lung all that time. She could only move her head and nothing else, and yet she took what she had, and she learned. They taught her to paint with a stick in her mouth, just moving her head around. They taught her how to type with this method, the stick in her mouth. She was able to help by writing to the newspaper. She was able to get them to think about, this is back in the 1970s, to think about people who are disabled, to have buses that, had little step-ups. And I was privileged to be a volunteer once a week for a year and a half. And talk about stories, about someone who So you talk about spiritual and a soul. I mean, she was better than so many people I knew, and she could move nothing else. And she learned how to frog breathe by pushing out her breath during the day so she could be taken places. So I arranged to take her to theater and doing things, and and she had no move. She couldn't move anything, but she at least had the pressure of blowing the breath out, which gave her a way during the day to be awake. And I will never forget that. That was one of the moments in my life that has helped me through everything.
I think it's wonderful to hear stories of people like that, because sometimes we complain about things, and remember, I think an attitude of gratitude is so important. And there's somebody who had such a tough time, and yet we complain sometimes about little things compared to that. And remembering that, what is that famous poem about? I complained because I had no shoes till I saw a man who had no feet.
And that was the story. And people used to come there who were staying in the hospital for help from her, for her to
inspire them.
Yeah, so we have a lot of people, and you really are very inspirational yourself, but you're doing it on such a grand scale here, and of course your books. I can't tell you, as a writer myself, and as understanding publishing, I know this is not easy. Every time when I open your book and I see all the words, and this did not just happen. I don't know, how long does it take for a book like this to be put together?
I do one usually every year, plus a video, plus all the other work that we do.
Well, and I know that I want to talk about your books, but can we just go off the beaten track for a moment and talk about how I know that Dr. and Mrs. Janke, friends of yours, very close friends, like family, and I was introduced to you by them. What he has done, what they have done for your organization, and especially the medical part.
Well, we don't only speak about love, we actually do it in a very concrete. In fact, we have a charity called Food Relief International, and our motto is charity is love made concrete. So we've founded over 40 schools, and these schools are for working children, for the very poorest of the poor. Our rule is that we work with people either in disaster or disastrous conditions. So we go into the very worst conditions to help, where nobody else wants to go, places where there's no facility at all. And Lalita Janke, who's a wonderful humanitarian, is also a disciple, and she and her husband, Dr. Walter Janke, who is the founder of the Janke Heart Valve and was the first heart specialist to do open heart surgery in Broward County. Wonderful people who are on the board of our charity, and she also is a disciple, and have taken wonderful, wonderful care of me when I was very ill. They nursed me. I stay in their house in Pompano when I come to America. And they've just recently been in Bangladesh to see our projects. Our director, Raja Khan, who's here today with us, showed them the school, a medical eye camp where we have people come. And our eye camps, I have to say, we don't take salaries for this. We believe that we want to show the goodness, innate goodness of people.
And Mother Rytasha, let's stop for another interlude, and we'll talk about the eye camps. I think that requires almost a special little time. So we'll be right back.